Good afternoon once again, everybody. Yes, my name's Steve Pearce. I'm head of sales here for TJC, and I cover the Nordics as well as the UK and Ireland. Now, today, you'll be very pleased to know you won't just have to listen to me for half an hour. I've got my colleague Ashish Rathi with me. Ashish is our principal software engineer, and he is the guy who's responsible for our legacy system decommissioning application called ELSA. So he'll be showing a demonstration of that. So I'm just going to talk for 10 minutes and then hand over to Ashish. So today we're going to be talking about making a business case for a decommissioning project and really sort of why a structured approach to decommissioning those legacy systems should be on your project roadmap. Planning your project, so what to consider before moving forward with the project and what options you might have for how the project is structured. And that's really to suit your individual business requirements. Dealing with the whole legacy landscape, including non-SAP legacy systems. And finally, the interesting part will be a demonstration of the software at quite a high level from Ashish, and hopefully you'll get a flavor of what the software looks like and what it does. And hopefully we'll have a bit of time at the end for questions from Ashish as well, or with Ashish, should I say. So you may not realize it, but on average, 70% of an annual IT budget typically will be taken up by managing and maintaining legacy systems across your business. And that's not just the cost of storing the data and dealing with increased data growth year on year, but all of those other cost centers that you can see on the right hand side of this slide here as well. So sometimes some of these costs are quite hard to quantify, but the majority are actually obvious areas where legacy system decommissioning is going to make an obvious difference to your operating costs across your business. So what are your options then? Well, even though we're talking about running decommissioning projects today, sometimes, you know, the sensible decision is to do nothing at all. So, for example, if you have a system with very old data, maybe it's an old acquired system, a legacy system from a company that was acquired. That data is not needed for tax and audit purposes, and it's outdated data from a compliance point of view. You've got the choice of either just keeping the system, even if you stop paying support and it's unsupported, or just deleting it after a sensible period of time. Or you could just do 100% data extract of that system. If there's no need to regularly access the data, but the business doesn't really want to delete the data, you can just extract that and put it into a secure tax archive. And you've also got the option of hosting the full legacy system on a virtual machine as well. As the case with most legacy systems, the best thing to do is look at the option of decommissioning as a strategy across your whole more than just a single standalone system project. Now, often data archiving and decommissioning go hand in hand. In fact, all of the time, data archiving and decommissioning go hand in hand. And that's especially the case when we're looking at archiving perhaps an ECC before migrating to S/4HANA. Once the migration's done, then you go back and decommission your ECC system. So this slide is really a reminder of the main advantages of data archiving. And we're going to focus on the right-hand column here, just to highlight some of the issues that your business might be having today. Some of them obvious and some of them not so obvious. So system performance is something that's often intangible until improvements are put in place and you have before and after comparisons that can be made. So significant gains can be made in operational efficiency, both by doing an initial archiving project and by adopting ILM to control that data growth of data. And less data, of course, means migration times are quicker, backup times, restore times, and they're all improved. So controlling your data growth means you can opt for the right license model for your business, and especially because HANA is on a per gigabyte model now. So in our experience, that data volume growth, that's the primary reason companies implement archiving and ILM in the first place. And of course, you know, that helps from a GDPR perspective, which is always important. But all of that goes on there is a precursor to decommissioning. which is why we talk about a data management strategy to encompass multiple systems across your business, where decommissioning is maybe just one piece of that puzzle. So we've just looked at some of the issues you might face with data growth. Now, what about bottom line costs? Well, typically a company can look to save 60 to 80% on the operating costs of retaining a legacy system. So the underlying costs are made up of software licenses, of course, system and operational support, upgrades, admin, and maybe the cost of hosting and running the systems as well. So when you decommission a system, you'd extract 100% of that data and still retain access to it, of course, in a secure cloud environment. And on top of all of this, it makes sense to centralize the decommissioning processes for multiple legacy systems, maybe with a sort of unified solution across not only different systems in your immediate business, but across maybe multi-country operations if you've got a global business. A simplified solution, so a single vendor under a single contract that takes ownership of dealing with large volumes of data in your business from archived and non-SAP sources. And of course, that flexibility, so extracting data and preparing reports and then still having sort of full access to it so that you can satisfy the requirements from auditors as well. So in terms of planning then, there are a number of things to consider before embarking on a decommissioning project. The easiest thing is actually deciding which systems are the highest priority. So it may well be all of these systems are on your roadmap for decommissioning, but what you'll be looking at first is those with the highest priority. So your IT team, they'll be able to tell you which systems are sort of clear and obvious front runners for decommissioning, if you like. And that'll be based on the cost of maintaining the systems and how that data is accessed and how it's used. So the type of data residing in these systems is extremely important to understand, actually. You need to be aware of any potential tax and compliance issues, and you need to make sure that the legacy archiving application will support those requirements. So apart from extracting the data, you need to make sure that you can access it in a way that the business needs, and you'll need to be sure that the data is going to be secure in this central legacy archive application. So the implementation methodology, the architecture, and the project team that will be sort of involved in the project, they'll all be determined during the consultancy phase, and you'd work with your decommissioning partner to determine the return on investment based on the full scope and the full understanding of the project. But there are different ways that you can approach a decommissioning project, and this could differ, should I say, project by project. So I mentioned earlier that you may need to extract 100% of the data from an old legacy system and just store it very simply in a secure tax archive without the need to regularly access that data. And that would be the simplest way to decommission an old obsolete system. The second option on here, of course, is for a full analysis of each of your legacy systems. Now at TJC, we call this an expertise. Some people call it analysis, some call it discovery, but this is an option for sort of single standalone systems, but it's absolutely essential for multi-system projects in a very complex IT landscape, because understanding what's in the scope of the project is absolutely critical at the outset, because so many things can be missed, and especially with old systems that people aren't that familiar with, you really need to sort of do a deep analysis to understand what you're dealing with. So once those priority systems have been identified, we'll help define sort of what the needs are in terms of tax and audit requirements, business user needs, any other architecture, security, compliance requirements, and things like that. We'd interview all the major stakeholders and produce a series of recommendations for the implementation. And the third choice there, if you had multiple systems, maybe on a single ERP, we'd recommend running maybe a pilot or a proof of concept, just to prove the solution and define the scope of work for further systems on that ERP instance. So being the first system to be decommissioned, working teams would be established. All the architecture and interface issues will be addressed in that first pilot or proof of concept. and that would make the subsequent projects a lot more predictable, and you'd have a lot more confidence in them. So everything would be documented, of course, and then full access will be sort of granted to business users, tax users, and users required for audit. So just a couple more slides left before I hand over to Ashish. This is a nice little slide, and it's just to summarize the process that I described in the previous slide. So here on your left-hand side are your legacy systems. They can be SAP, non-SAP. That's the case with most large businesses that we find. There is a mix of them. And in the middle there, they're all the functions that the TJC application would perform. And again, I shan't go into those because Ashish is going to be covering those. And on the right hand side there, this sort of just demonstrates the way that the data is fully accessible for reports and queries. So it also demonstrates that the user can make a single query in the SAP system and then search for that data, or that will search for the data across live data, archive data, decommissioned data, just from a single search. And the last slide in this section is just a very, very quick one. And it really just sort of demonstrates the fact that we're completely flexible about how the project is structured and how that ongoing support will happen. So very, very simply, at the top of the pyramid here, we would always look after for our clients the access part of it. And obviously, that's our application there, ELSA. But what we're saying here is that we're completely flexible in the way that the company may want to manage their own database. They might have their own SAP BTP platform, and they can manage the infrastructure as well. It just means that there's complete flexibility, for every project. Now, you'll be pleased to know, even though this is the third section, it's only one slide long. We've spoken mostly about SAP legacy systems, but it's highly likely, as I think I said with the last slide, that you'll have non-SAP systems in your business, and one by one, at some point, you do need to address what to do with those non-SAP systems too. So that's why they need to be part of that overall strategy to rationalize the data in your business and actually make sure that that you decommission all of those systems that really are sort of outdated and not required anymore. And you decommission, or you'd approach a decommissioning project in the same way with a non-SAP system as you would with an SAP system. So it could be perhaps that we'd need to run an analysis in each of those systems, especially some of the lesser known systems, just so that we can assess the quality of the data in the system and be confident there's nothing unusual that might add cost and complexity as the project bears out. But essentially, you can decommission all of your legacy systems into a single application.